Hello and welcome to Tuesday. So it's time for the top tens. Couple things real quick. I keep introducing this video saying there's nothing YouTube likes better than cat videos. My daughter actually posted a cat video for her cat's quote unquote birthday, and it was funny because it was 8 minutes long and it had so many views on Twitter it wasn't even funny. But anyway, I thought it was hilarious. Just like I said, it's just cat videos. I don't know what the deal is. But anyway, welcome to Top Tens. Not much feedback last week. I did get a couple complaints that it is kind of long. You'll have to forgive me whenever I talk about Ric Flair. I do tend to ramble a bit. This week is going to be another top 10 list of rivalries. This time I'm going to take Sting. Since I did talk a good bit about how I feel Ric Flair built Sting, I figure this week I'll turn around and do Sting. Don't worry, I will not do Lex Luger next week. I promise. If you have ideas or concepts or corrections, by all means put it below. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume that, yes, you agree with everything I had to say. So, let's talk about Sting. I'm not that big a Sting fan, I'm just going to be honest with you, and it may reflect a little bit in the countdown, but again, I know Steve's a bigger Sting fan than I am, but then again, he's also a bigger Hogan mark than I am because that is his all-time favorite wrestler. Number two, probably Brutus Beefcake, but I'll let Steve handle that. This week, by the way, on the 7pound.com website, he did go over the top 10 WrestleMania main event matches, and I am crushed that Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow did not make the list. But I will say, if you go back and actually watch that match, Bam Bam Bigelow is freaking amazing in it. It's unreal how he did. I mean, you think that Ric Flair leading somebody like Lex Luger, back in his broomstick period is amazing. What Bam Bam does here with Lawrence Taylor's pretty freaking incredible. I'll be honest with you. I don't think Bam Bam gets near as much credit or near as much remembrance because of that. Because everybody's so focused on what Lawrence Taylor does. It does kind of put what Arn Anderson and Ric Flair did at the Bash at the Beach against Mongo McMichael and Kevin Green almost to shame. He drags a much better match out of Lawrence Taylor than those two did, out of two guys that were legitimate wrestling fans and legitimately trained and tried. But anyway, maybe we need to talk about that another time. Let's get on with the countdown. Words of Casey Kasem. Number 10, Jeff Jarrett. Again, this is mostly for TNA and a good bit in WCW, even though they really didn't cross that much. I do kind of look at Jeff Jarrett as more or less an anti-Sting. Throughout much of his run, they always tried to build Sting up as such a hero so Jeff Jarrett could be such a heel. And I don't think it ever really took off. I don't think Jeff Jarrett's a bad wrestler, bad in a stretch of the imagination, but I do think his last name kind of gets him a lot further than he probably deserved to get. But I do put him at number 10 just for longevity and just because they kind of had to. Number 9, Randy Savage. Again, I think that kind of speaks to itself in WCW. They did have a few mini feuds, never really one real good long one. Again, they circled around each other way too much. You had every time those two would kind of tie into it, Hogan or Flair would end up popping up and end up taking it over. Number 8, Kurt Angle. Again, WCW. I think this is without a shadow of a doubt Kurt Angle probably at his non-Austin best. I think Sting kind of pulls it better at him better than Samoa Joe does because Angle gave way too much at Samoa Joe, and Samoa Joe just wasn't good enough to kind of push along with it. But I think Angle's best non-Austin work, well, I guess you could say non-Austin slash Jericho slash Benoit work, was with Sting. Even though Sting was much older, he still had a style that Angle could pair with, and it worked really well. Number 7, Cactus Jack. As you can tell, I'm kind of blowing through these a little bit. Mick Foley still considers his match with Sting as his favorite match to watch. It's not hard to see why. It's a very good match. It's a very aborted feud, of course, because, again, you still have the specter of Vader kind of coming over. For some reason, they're still kind of trying to keep Mick a bit of a heel. It's kind of forgotten, except for that one match, but it is kind of memorable because Cactus Jack is, again, very good on the stick. And again, you do have the kind of Harley connections, but it's not bad. Like I said, it's about as good as it can kind of get as far as how WCW treated Cactus Jack. Number 6, and trust me, I kind of draw a big old huge line between everybody else and going forward, just because it's mostly either TNA or goofy crap. Mostly TNA crap, but still. Number 6, Rick Rude. Sting has kind of finally moved on from Ric Flair. WCW creates the International World Championship. It's a beautiful looking belt, to be quite honest with you. Rude spends several months kind of in the number 2 feud, I guess, in the company, because Vader is off with Ron Simmons. He's off with Flair. Both Rude and Sting kind of get pushed together, and it works wonderful. It's a great little feud that's unfortunately halted because Rude ends up getting injured in a match with Sting and messes up his back, and he's never 100% back as a wrestler. He's never 100% period, unfortunately, which, rest in peace, Rick Rude. But it definitely ended a career that, had miles to go, and a feud that had miles to go. Number 5, the Great Muta. I talked last time about how Terry Hart kind of gets a little jobbed a little bit, but it's a fun little feud here. Again, it kind of I want to say it was under the TV title, if memory serves. But Great Muta did kind of mesh with Sting very well. I did really enjoy how that was done. But still, I do think that you kind of have to look at that. Number 4, I'm going Hulk Hogan. Probably a little low, but I do want you to kind of keep in mind that I have watched Sting pretty much since the day he entered the NWA. The Hogan run, it was not so much really Hogan, it was more the whole NWO and Hogan just at its head. He kind of had to push himself through. It's kind of like if I ever got bored enough to do a big boss man feuds, yeah, he kind of ran on with, Kurt hitting and everybody else, but the main feud was against Bobby the Brain Heenan. That's what it was building up to. Same thing here, except an opposite, because Sting had to go through so much junk just to get to Hogan. And there really wasn't that much of a payoff. There really wasn't a whole lot of Hogan chasing Sting. I think the next pay-per-view, I want to say he was up against Scott Hall, if memory serves. You never really had a true months-long feud with Hogan and Sting. It was a horrible blow-off. It was horribly done. The build-up was awesome. But again, Hogan feuded more with the idea of Sting more than actual Sting. You didn't get match upon match upon match. You just had Sting kind of stay there. You had all the fake Stings. There really wasn't. It was a beautiful build, don't get me wrong. It was kind of compelling, but it still wasn't them fighting each other week in and week out. And that does ding it. I do put it up here because, again, it was a long-time feud, but it just was never it built to one match and then it quit. I mean, even Hogan Andre, even though that was built to WrestleMania 3, at least they did kind of keep pushing it for another year or more, but still never did. I mean, Sting, I think, lost the title in April, if memory serves, and it never really was built back up to Hogan versus Sting. And you never really got a lot of returns off of it, and they never returned to that chasing formula. I mean, Sting even joins the NWA Wolfpack and just stupid backwards thinking. But that's kind of where you got here. Number 3, I'm going with Lex Luger. NWA kind of lost its footing, so to speak, for a good bit. They always tried to push Luger versus Sting. They were really close friends on and off screen, and it just never really clicked. Like I said last week, Sting could never build Luger the way Flair built Sting. Part of that is Luger's charisma. He has a lot of it, but never long term. You never really cared about Luger for more than a half hour. Just didn't happen. Sting would always try to bring Luger back into the light, so to speak. Luger would always eventually turn, but Luger was never put in that top role. But again, it happened for years. I mean, even with the Wolfpack later on, it was still Luger trying to convince Sting to be something, or Sting trying to pull Luger into the good side. But I think just for longevity and for a time, WCW kind of pushed everything down its throat just so much, where Sting was trying to make Luger into a moralist opponent or friend or ally or whatever. I think maybe had there been a bigger, more evil heel out there, that Lex could have actually done something with it. Sting could have actually done something. I think the promos just didn't sell what they needed to. Like I said, you kind of needed, maybe had the Giant been around, and Sting kind of had to tell Luger how to embrace the goodness. Maybe you could have done something. but again, it just never happened. It never really clicked, but Lord knows they tried. So I'm going to put this here just for longevity and the fact that again they still went at each other off and on constantly. Number two, I don't think there's any question. It's Vader. The whole White Castle of Fear, the Dwarves, British Bulldog, Cactus Jack, everything kind of built to Vader versus Sting. It was an amazing series of matches. It was probably the best man, little man match you can kind of put with these two characters. Vader just came out there and just slapped the snot out of everybody. Sting again could take an ass whipping like nobody's business. Vader could deal one out at one time. Pre-Hogan, Vader crushed everybody. The only ones that could ever really stand against Vader was, of course, Ron Simmons to a certain extent until that kind of blew off with Bill Watts, which is always kind of funny considering his reputation. Sting for a good bit of time, and finally Flair kind of ended that at Starrcade. And then, of course, Hogan came in and Vader was never the same just because that you can't have a big monster heel and then his finisher gets no-sold. But for a time, Vader versus Sting, that was a match you just wanted to see, and you didn't care how. It's amazing how much they screwed up to spin the wheel, make the deal. That was just amazingly stupid booking. But I tell you, you get April '92, Omni, Vader versus Sting 1. It's hard not to beat that. I mean, that was just, I was never a big Sting fan, like I said, but man, I love those matches because I was a huge Vader fan. I mean, the huge mask, the smoke and all that, it was just monster theater. And it was probably one of the high points in WCW, again, pre-Hogan, that didn't actually involve Flair, to be quite honest with you. Number one, of course, is Flair. You can't, it's obvious. Flair built Sting from pretty much nothing, promised him the title, made him who they want, made Sting a top face for years. That Sting is still kind of living off, to be quite honest with you. Once Dusty finally faded into the background to go wear polka dots in WWF, it was Sting versus Flair with other characters mixed in on occasion. I mean, it was more than a decade these two carried everything on it. You could I mean, it's just amazing. The last match on WCW television, Sting versus Flair, as it should have been. Flair still trying to ride off into the sunset, still getting pulled into the ring one more time. Tell you the truth, I'm surprised he went out there in t-shirt and jeans and tennis shoes just because he didn't have his gear. But it's, or somebody's mismatched shoes just to make sure he's got gear on. But obviously, this has got to be your top overall feud between the two of them. But I did, like I said, they probably wrestled each other 1,000 times. They could come back and wrestle at this year's WrestleMania and still be just perfectly fine. One big mistake that Vince, I think, never did is he never did put the money out or do whatever he could to actually get Sting to come in there and face Flair at WrestleMania. Just because, again, he couldn't get him out of TNA. Sting just didn't want to do it for whatever reason. He wanted to kind of stay out of WWE's control for whatever reason. You can throw all the reasons you want, but eventually he did sign. He did have the DVD set. He did do that. I mean, so you can say what you want, but again, it's Sting versus Flair. I mean, that is his greatest rival. Again, anybody else you want to throw out there, I'm perfectly acceptable with it. I will not accept Jeff Hardy submissions. Not going to happen. But again, I'll cut this short so Steve doesn't get mad at me. But come back next Tuesday. We'll see what else we can do. Maybe I'll do another Rivals video if y'all like these. Please, by all means, hit the website. Again, it's 7poundback.com, as you can tell down below it. Please like and subscribe, and I will see y'all next week. I do have a movie review coming out this weekend. Please enjoy. If not two, I'll be doing downsizing. But again, in interest of downsizing this video, have a great week.